VR is revolutionary. Not only will it redefine the way we play video games, not only will it redefine entertainment, but it will change every single industry and every single aspect of human life. A technology that gives us the ability to go anywhere we want and do anything we want has limitless possibilities. But the games are pretty fun too. Okay, everything should be all set, and guess I need a new headset. Like any technology, VR requires both good hardware and software to really excel. Luckily, VR has existed long enough where there are some decent options when it comes to hardware. But if you're looking for a headset that won't cost you an arm and a leg, you've really only got two options: the Quest 2 or the Valve Index. The latter of which will still cost you about $1,000, but those two are really your best bets. Now, it may seem like a landslide victory for the Quest 2 with just its price alone, but the Quest 2, while being even better than the Index in some areas, really falls behind in many, many others. The Quest 2 is a standalone headset, meaning that it can run by itself using a mobile processing chip and running a modded version of Android. This makes the Quest 2 your only option if you don't have a PC, as it's the only affordable option of its kind. But this comes with many setbacks, as the Quest 2 really isn't comparable in performance to a PC, and the games are really hit hard because of this. A lot of the experiences are extremely half-baked and feel a lot more like mobile games than full-fledged gaming experiences. But that can be said for most VR titles. The problem with the Quest is that a lot of the big VR games just can't run on it. If you want to play Half-Life Alyx or Boneworks, you're out of luck. But many new VR games are now releasing with the Quest 2 in mind, so with the Quest, you can still play games like Pavlov, Onward, Population 1, and Bone Lab. The Valve Index does not have standalone capabilities, but makes up for that with everything else: higher FOV, better controllers, better tracking, better audio, and pretty much every way the headset is better. The controllers especially are fantastic. The Knuckles truly change the way VR feels. Hand tracking on the Quest is cool, but the Knuckles controllers serve pretty much the same purpose and do it way better. And of course, with the Index, you have a large catalog of usually better games on Steam. But wait, the Quest 2 can play all of these games too using Virtual Desktop, or AirLink for a wireless experience, or a USB-C cable for wired. You can play all the same games. Sure, you have to deal with a little bit of compression, but it mostly works fine. That's the thing about VR hardware. We got into a point where all VR hardware works well enough to play VR games. The Index is better once you try it, but you'll still thoroughly enjoy your time with a cheaper headset, and you won't really notice any of the problems. But if you have the money, the Index is definitely worth it. There's not a lot to do without any games. Half-Life Alyx. Sounds fun. That was awesome. Most developers fail to realize that VR design can't just be a plain copy of traditional flat-screen games. VR excels in certain areas and completely falls apart in others. The team at Valve understood this perfectly when they designed Half-Life Alyx, using skill to tell a story, creating gameplay mechanics revolving around the control the players have over their character in VR, and evolving the Half-Life mechanics to fit into VR. I don't agree with all of their decisions, like the lack of any melee. Come on, Gabe. But overall, it's a great game. One of my favorite parts of Alyx are the close encounters the game constantly gives the players, where one has to duck and shoot, and there's actual fear when these things get close to you, in a way that just can't be replicated in a flat-screen game. Alyx also features puzzles which require you to reach your hand in cramped spaces, having to reach around objects and move objects around to solve your puzzle, or using perspective as a puzzle. These are things that just can't be done without VR. The Jeff level of Alyx has already been talked about hundreds of times, but man is it fantastic. It really uses VR to its fullest and provides a truly terrifying experience. One of the other areas in which Alyx is really strong is accessibility. Most VR games take two routes when it comes to accessibility. Either they just don't do it, or they lean into it so much that it ruins the experience for other players. Alyx is one of the few games that perfectly nails accessibility. The game gives the players many different accessibility options they can turn on and off. The game has probably the best teleportation mechanics in any VR game, and just does a fantastic job overall. I'm not someone who really experiences motion sickness much in VR, but I know that many people do, and I think it's fantastic that Alyx is an experience that everyone can enjoy and that doesn't focus on any one side of its player base. Overall, Alyx is a fantastic game and definitely worth a play. I just hope the rest of the games keep up this level of quality. Let's see. Bone Lab. Sounds fun. The Bone series is a great example of where VR really excels. What's the point of playing an accurate simulation of something you can do for cheaper in real life, or something you can even get paid for doing? Bonelab really lets you do the impossible, jump impossible heights, be whoever you want to be, and try out things you've always wanted to do but just haven't been able to do. And this is all without even mentioning the brilliant physics system. Stress Level 0 really blew themselves out of the park with that. Now, I'm not saying I want a fully immersive experience. I don't want to replace reality. VR can't be a replacement of reality, or else there should be no reason to play VR, or worse, there should be no reason to experience true reality. It needs to be an extension of our reality, allowing us to do things we can't do on our own in the real world. But seriously, Bonelab is what VR is for. Technology has been building up for years to allow us to dress as Master Chief while holding an AirPod shotgun in 7-Eleven while killing Dr. Kleiner. Yeah, it may sound silly, but this is where VR excels. This is what I bought my headset for. Not for some immersive experience like an Alex, though I still love that game, but for something that I can't do anywhere else. Now, to be fair, Bonelab is not a perfect game. Far from it, actually. While the physics system and post-game content is amazing, the campaign itself sucks. Just absolutely horrible.
I don't need another player. What I need is a DM.
There are 3, maybe 4 levels in the entire campaign, not including the middle arcade levels, that are actually good. Now, I didn't care for the campaign. That doesn't mean the game isn't worth your time. I would highly recommend Bonelab. Beat Saber. Oh, I've heard of this before. It looks fun. Wowzers, my arms hurt. Which, considering my lack of arms, is a pretty big deal. Beat Saber is one of those games that, even with its small form factor, hits every single mark for a game that you could just continue to play forever. One can never perfect the craft of the blade, and while it can get boring playing the same OST songs over and over again, there's such a huge modding community for it that one can never really get bored of it. Beat Saber is a perfect game for VR. Every mechanic in the game matches some piece of hardware and what it can and can't do. There is no body in Beat Saber, it's just 2 blades, and these blades work perfectly with the controllers. There's no buttons to push, it's just swinging. The walls work off of the headset, forcing players to move their head to avoid obstacles, and the whole game itself can only really be displayed through a VR headset. It's honestly the perfect title for VR and a must-have for any owner. Okay, let's see what's next. Ugh. There's nothing else to play. Beyond at most 20 really good titles, pretty much all other VR games stink. That's probably VR's biggest problem. There's plenty of VR hardware, and there are some very, very good VR games, but Half-Life Alyx and Bonelab aren't enough to keep me playing. A lot of VR games in general are bad ports of traditional flat-screen games, or are just practically mobile games. So rarely do we receive fully baked AAA games for VR, which is why Bonelab and Half-Life Alyx and a few others are so special. These are games that you can just play forever. Even Half-Life Alyx, which I doubt was made with replayability in mind, could entertain me forever. VR is so much fun when it's done right, but when it's done poorly, it can be disastrous. But overall, I think it's still important to note that VR is still a relatively new medium, and I honestly think we're lucky to already have such great games. And I hope to see VR flourish in the future.